Well, greetings, YouTube, LMS Tactical. Hope everybody's doing good. Listen, I rarely, if ever, I don't think I've ever countered another YouTube channel's subject matter, but in the interest of safety, I'm gonna break that. And I don't mean to be rude to these guys. The YouTube channel that I'm going to refer to is named Wilson Combat, and I actually subscribe to these guys. I'm a new subscriber, but I've always said regarding firearms and regarding life in general that be wary of anybody that classifies themselves as experts in anything. Life is fluid; things are always changing. We're always learning from after action reports, what goes good, what goes bad, what can be changed. Things can always be improved, and you can learn from everybody, whether it's the newest guy right out of the academy or the old timer in the back of the roll call room. But in this case, I'm going to let you see just a little clip of what I caught on one of their latest videos, and then I'm going to give you my opinion, and it's going to be a little different than what they're talking about. Hang on.
I see people abuse magazines terribly.
Oh yeah,
From dropping them on pavement
with them fully loaded.
Which remember the rounds are going to bounce down and then come back up, which causes the lips to spread.
Yeah.
I see the other one you've seen too is where if you've only got, say, that's a partial magazine, you're doing a mag change and you're dumping a magazine that's got, say, 5, or you got a Glock mag that's only got 5 rounds. Well, when you dot, the weight is at the top where the rounds are, so it's going to, as it falls, it's probably going to turn and land on the lips.
Yeah.
Which means now you've got abuse there. And I've seen some loading procedures. I remember I did a...
Okay, so the premise that they were basically putting out there was that, and in the video, if you watch their whole video, they're talking about poor firearm handling, things that are bad for firearms. And if you look at the comments, a lot of people agree, disagree. It seems like more disagree. I don't want to beat these guys up, so I'm just going to stick to this one issue that they threw in there regarding magazines. And, I didn't come up with this, but anybody that's been around weapons and law enforcement, military, we understand very clearly that you have to train like you fight and fight like, because you're going to fight like you train. Having been in armed encounters, I can tell you that things that you do really come down to muscle memory, and you build your muscle memory up through training. In a shooting I was in when I was with the LAPD in Hollywood, I reloaded hot. And did it exactly the way that I had trained and had visualized myself doing, and had no real memory of doing it until I looked back on it. In other words, you don't have to think about it because you do. There's a famous case, and I've referred to it before, and it was out in California, and I think it was Newhall, and it was, I think 3 or 4 highway patrol officers got killed in a gunfight with 2 guys. And the thing about that shooting was at the scene, and this was, before I was a cop, this went down, but at the scene of the shooting, the officers they died. A lot of them, or more than a couple of them died reloading. They had revolvers, but they had the empty brass in their pockets. And what we as law enforcement people learned from that was, holy shit, that's muscle memory. These guys at that particular time, at that particular academy, so they didn't have to pick up brass at the end of their shooting, would put their brass in their pockets, right? So when it came down to an actual gunfight, it was instilled in their muscle memory to do that. Instead of dumping the brass onto the ground and reloading and continuing on with the fight, I think one of them had his hand in his pocket when he was killed. So after that, it became, you get in trouble if you get caught doing that in the academy. At least when I went through in '84, you dump it on the ground and you just pick the shit up at the end of the training. And it's a bitch, but it could save your life. There were other factors involved in that shooting, but those are things that you learn when you look closely at what goes wrong and why things happened. With respect to the magazines, unless I heard differently and you saw the clip, these guys were sort of reprimanding people for dropping magazines onto the ground. Magazine abuse, they called it. Listen, there are times that you don't drop your mags, and the one in my shooting, that's what I did. That's what I meant when I said I reloaded hot. I lost count, like most guys in shootouts, of how many rounds I had fired, and so not wanting to get caught on an empty. I was using a Beretta 92F at the time, 9mm. So I'm still hot even if I have the magazine out of the weapon. So in a lull in the gunfight, instead of dropping a magazine with extra rounds that I might need, I stuck it in my belt in case I needed it later. And that was how I had trained. But when you run a magazine dry, you drop that motherfucker on the ground. I don't give a shit if it splits into 6,000 pieces. All right. You don't worry about the shape of your magazine or the condition. If your magazines break during training, then that's good. You got a fucked up magazine, and now you got to go get another one. Replace it. It's much better to go through a shitload of magazines in training and then have your life saved because you weren't killed while you were trying to save your precious magazine from getting scratched or damaged or your rounds flipping around or whatever the fucking case is, and sticking it in your pocket. When you run that weapon dry and you're doing a fucking reload, an emergency reload, you drop that motherfucker, and I don't care what happens to it. That's my opinion. You don't have to agree with it, but I'm telling you, there's enough evidence by way of other officer-involved shootings and civilian shootings that you can draw upon. Just study these things. That's what I do. I look at these things, and just be careful. Be careful. Everything you see on YouTube is not factual, including on my channel. Everything that I'm telling you, it comes from my own experience. I'm an NRA firearms instructor, a civilian and law enforcement firearms instructor. I'm also certified through the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center as a law enforcement firearms instructor. Does that mean I'm an expert? No. I don't know certain things and forget other things, but you take everything you hear on these channels and listen to other opposing views, and then come up with your own opinion based on really thinking it through. Just because somebody says don't drop a magazine on the ground doesn't mean that dropping a magazine on the ground is a bad thing. So I hope that made sense. I haven't really had a lot of coffee this morning, but anyways, the whole idea behind this is to keep you safe, keep you alive. So stay alert, stay alive, and stay safe. LMS Tactical, I'm out.